Hello and Namo Buddha. Welcome to Wisdom and Wealth, your guide to a richer, more fulfilling life, both inside and out. I'm excited to have you join me for this episode of our Inner Guide Q&A program. Before we dive in, if you're interested in insightful advice and wisdom, especially for those of us navigating life after 40, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. Today, I want to pose a question we can all probably relate to. How many times have you meticulously crafted timetables and to-do lists at the start of a new year, a new term, or even just a new day, only to find yourself completely off track almost immediately? Now, be honest, we've all been there. It's a universal experience, isn't it? We create these ambitious plans, filled with good intentions, and then, life happens. We get sidetracked, distracted, or simply lose momentum. We all have made detailed to-do lists and set up rigid timetables, yet we struggle to adhere to them consistently. Why is that? The simple answer is procrastination. So, in today's video, we're going to delve into the heart of procrastination. We'll unpack what it truly is and, more importantly, explore practical strategies to overcome it. But first, let me assure you, don't be too hard on yourself about procrastinating. Don't beat yourself up about it. Why? Because it's a very normal part of human nature. Now, if you are finding this interesting, consider subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth. You know, the average person is actually quite a proficient procrastinator. Let's face it, we all possess a degree of inherent laziness. We all experience those feelings of procrastination, that internal resistance to tackling tasks, that desire to simply relax and put things off. And that is okay. However, if you aspire to rise above the ordinary, if you truly desire to achieve something special and meaningful in this often anxious world, then you absolutely must confront and break free from these unproductive habits. So, the first step is to stop being so afraid of procrastination. Remember this. Procrastination, this tendency to postpone, this mental sluggishness that resides within you, is fundamentally a habit. And habits, as we know, are largely rooted in our minds. It's not inherently a physical limitation, nor is it dictated by our external environment. It's all in your head, which means you possess the power to influence it, to manage it, and ultimately, to overcome it. So, let's start by defining exactly what procrastination is. At its core, procrastination is that mental barrier, that internal resistance, that prevents you from doing the things that you know you should be doing. Procrastination is an obstacle that can block you from reaching your full potential. Now, let's consider a common scenario. Imagine waking up in the morning and knowing that you have to study. Do you feel immediately compelled to jump out of bed and dive into your books? Or do you experience that internal struggle, that mental resistance? If you are experiencing this mental struggle, your mind might whisper tempting suggestions like, "No, just stay in bed for 5 more minutes. It's okay, I have plenty of time. I can always do it later." That, my friends, is procrastination in action. That is the insidious voice of your mind trying to get you off your path. But here's the irony. The same mind that urges us to procrastinate will be the first to complain when things start to fall apart. When exams are looming, when deadlines are rapidly approaching, and you find yourself woefully unprepared, that same mind will turn on you. It will berate you with questions like, "Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you stick to your timetable? You are such a procrastinator." It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? So, we absolutely cannot allow our minds to play these kinds of tricks on us. We must learn to take control. Now, if you are gaining value from this content, please subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. So, how do we stop procrastinating? Well, there's a profound and insightful verse from the Dharmapada, a collection of teachings attributed to the Buddha, that offers valuable guidance. In that verse, we find several key elements that can help us break free from this detrimental habit. The Buddha teaches that if a person is energetic, if they are mindful, if they consistently act in accordance with what is good and right in their thoughts, words, and deeds, and if they can control their sensual desires and cravings, then that diligent person's fame and wealth will naturally increase and develop. Within that single verse, we find a roadmap to overcoming procrastination. So, what are these key elements that the Buddha highlights? First and foremost, he emphasizes the importance of being energetic, of taking action. And let's be honest, there's truly only one way to conquer procrastination, and that is to take action. But that's often the biggest hurdle, isn't it? That is often the biggest obstacle to overcome, right? It can feel incredibly difficult to summon the energy, to muster the motivation, to simply begin. It feels difficult to take action and to get the work done. It's a tough thing to do. So, what practices can we cultivate to help us overcome this initial resistance, to jump over this seemingly insurmountable hurdle? The key, according to the Buddha, lies in mindfulness. That is why the Buddha emphasizes the importance of being mindful about yourself. Be consistently aware of yourself. What should we be aware of? We should be aware of our own mind. As I mentioned earlier, procrastination is fundamentally a mental condition. It resides within our minds, it is composed of thoughts and emotions. Therefore, we must cultivate the ability to be mindful and aware of our own thoughts. We must develop the skill to recognize what is arising within our minds. With increased awareness, we can start to detect the moment laziness begins to creep in. When lazy thoughts surface, we can recognize them for what they are and consciously choose to take action. When anger arises, we can identify it and acknowledge, my mind is feeling angry right now. As we become more mindful and aware, we gain the power to control our reactions. When you develop an increased awareness of your thoughts, you'll gain the ability to choose whether to react to those thoughts, or to observe them and let them pass without directing your actions. So, the first crucial step is to cultivate mindfulness and awareness. Right? As the Buddha teaches, we must strive to do what is right. For example, imagine you're studying, and your mobile phone is lying next to you. After a while, you feel the urge to pick it up and mindlessly scroll through social media. In that moment, pause and ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing something good? Am I doing what I should be doing right now? The answer will likely be a resounding no. I should be studying. Get back to work. That's why the Buddha tells us to consistently do what is right and to prioritize what needs to be done. You can enjoy those leisure activities during your downtime. Then you can have that experience and you can enjoy yourself. That's why the Buddha teaches that we must cultivate the ability to control our sensual desires. Our minds naturally crave instant gratification. They want to log onto social media, to be lazy, and to avoid any effort. That's why our minds constantly try to procrastinate. So, the Buddha teaches that to truly excel and achieve success in life, we must consciously relinquish some of these sensual desires. The feeling of laying in a nice, warm bed in the morning is a very pleasurable and comfortable feeling. However, if you have important tasks to accomplish, you have to give up that pleasurable feeling and you have to get back to studying. So, you need the mental power and the mental ability to overcome or give up sensual desires to some extent, so that you can do your work. Remember, if you consistently choose the easy path, if you perpetually indulge in immediate gratification, your future will be harder. If you want to be happy in the future, you have to undergo what is hard today. Therefore, the Buddha teaches that we must control our sensual desires. If we can integrate these principles into our lives, the Buddha assures us that our diligence and effort will lead to increased fame and wealth. These are the key elements that empower us to resist the allure of procrastination. Now, before we continue, if you are enjoying this content, please subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. I want to share some additional tips and strategies to help you overcome this pervasive habit. Remember that procrastination is often a way to relieve stress. For instance, if your exams are near, and you have a lot of material to study, do you find yourself actually studying, or do you succumb to procrastination? Very often we procrastinate because our minds need to alleviate stress in some way. Therefore, your mind will naturally gravitate towards the easiest and most immediate forms of relief, which often involve procrastination. Always remember, procrastination is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. So, how do we break free from this cycle? The answer lies in taking action. In the case of procrastination, we must consciously choose to do the opposite of what our mind is telling us to do. Another helpful strategy involves how we create our to-do lists. Sometimes students will make to-do lists and timetables they cannot afford. For example, many of us create schedules that are overly ambitious and unrealistic. We tell ourselves, I'm going to study for 1.5 hours, or I'm going to study for 3 hours. But our minds aren't prepared for that level of sustained focus, so what happens? We get discouraged and give up. So, you have to make achievable and realistic goals and timetables. What if you start with only 5 minutes? Would you be happy with only 5 minutes of studying? Your mind would be happy as well, and it would be more likely to follow along. If you can't manage 20 minutes, create a schedule that only requires 5. Tell yourself, I only have to study for 5 minutes. That's all. This can provide the initial motivation and momentum to get you out of bed and begin. Set achievable goals in your timetables. You can start with 5 minutes, or even just 1 minute. Who cares if it's only 1 minute? The reason for setting these achievable goals is that when we set these small tasks, in reality we usually do more than that. Almost everyone can study for more than 5 minutes, and almost everyone can study for more than 1 minute. Therefore, in reality you will probably end up studying for more than that. As time passes, you can gradually increase the amount of time you spend studying. That is much better than postponing the work. That is much better than doing nothing at all. Set achievable tasks. Also, ask one of your friends or your parents to review what you have done at the end of the day. Then you will have the motivation and the power to do more and more, to impress your friends, or to impress your parents. Right? Ask one of your friends or parents to review and check what you have done. Another important thing is that you need to change your mindset. Don't label yourself as a procrastinator. Remember, you're not inherently a procrastinator. You simply have a habit of procrastinating, and habits can be broken. The more you label yourself as a procrastinator, the more you will procrastinate. So, change your mindset, and think that this bad habit can be broken, and I have the power inside me to do work and to be successful. These are strategies we can use to stop procrastination. Always remember that when you procrastinate and postpone, you are not only procrastinating and postponing your work, but you are also procrastinating your happiness. So, don't let procrastination destroy your happiness. Stop procrastination by practicing these tips, and have a happy life. Thank you.